Yun yung may power. Mga kakorkada, alam niyo ba na pinakamababa ang Pilipinas kung ihahambing sa iba pang mga bansa sa ASEAN pagdating sa pagpasok ng Foreign Direct Investment o FDI? Ang Pilipinas kasi ay may pinakamahigpit na mga batas na sumasakal sa pagdaloy ng FDI sa bansa sa 10 na kasapi ng ASEAN at sa pang-63 na tala sa iba pang bansa noong 2015. Sa madaling salita, hindi nakakasabay ang Pilipinas sa pag-unlad ng mga karating bansa sa Asia dahil sa mababang FDI nito mula 2008. Sa core, layunin natin na magkaroon ng bukas na ekonomiya na ang lahat ay may pag-asa. Proposal ng Task Force Core na tanggalin ang restriction sa ekonomiya sa pamamagitan ng pag-amyenda sa probisyon ng 1. Operasyon sa public utilities, 2. Pagpapatakbo ng mga institusyong pang-edukasyon at 3. Regulasyon pagdating sa mass media at industriya ng advertising. Kaya nirekomenda ng core ang paglalagay ng salitang unless otherwise provided by law sa kaukulang restriksyon na kasalukuyang nakatala sa ating saligang batas. Ito ang sagot sa mas maraming oportunidad, mataas na gross domestic product, maraming trabaho, malakas na infrastruktura, improved na ease of doing business at competitiveness sa bansa. Bukas na ekonomiya para sa lahat. Sa ilalim ng Constitutional Reform o CORE, makakapaghatid na ang bansa ng abot-kayang serbisyo na aagapay sa pangangailangan ng mga mamamayan. Mas dadami ang mga mamumuhunan sa ating bansa na hindi lamang nalilimitahan sa iilang mga Pilipino. Dahil dito, mas magiging malawak at globally competitive ang ating ekonomiya. Mababawasan din ang iilang mga negosyanteng nagmamayari ng mga kumpanyang may monopolyo at nagkokontrol sa mga industriya sa bansa. Sa gayon, magkakaroon tayo ng isang healthy competition na kultura sa bansa. Ang pagdagsa ng foreign direct investment sa bansa ay magdadala ng maraming trabaho at oportunidad sa lahat. Halimbawa, dahil sa core, mas maraming kumpanya mula sa ibang bansa ang maaaring mamuhunan at makilahok sa build na programa ng ating pamahalaan na siyang makakapagpakilala at makapagdadala ng mas mahusay at dekalidad na produkto, expertise at makabagong ideya sa bansa. Hindi lang iyan, mapapalawig na rin ang mataas na kalidad pagdating sa teknolohiya, accessible at mababang presyo para sa mga mamimili, sapat na supply at mataas na antas ng infrastruktura na sagot sa matagal ng problema ng mga mamamayan sa komunidad maging sa ating ekonomiya. Sa core, makakamit ang minimithing paglago ng ating ekonomiya na siyang tuluyang mapapaunlad at mag-aangat sa ating bansa.
Matatag, maginhawa, at panatag na buhay. This is the Filipino people's collective aspiration. We have been working to turn this into reality for every Filipino by 2040. Unfortunately, in 2020, our lives have been disrupted by the unprecedented impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. Yet this crisis has only motivated us more to rise to the challenge. After all, our aspirations remain the same and have become even more pronounced today. But we may have to take a different course of action as we deal with the new normal. Now, more than ever, a whole of society and a whole of government approach is needed to overcome this health crisis and get back on track. Led by the National Economic and Development Authority, the government updated the Philippine Development Plan, or PDP 2017 to 2022, to enable the country to effectively respond to the COVID-19 pandemic, quickly recover, and then transition to a new and better normal. The strategies have been made more responsive to current, emerging, and future needs and challenges in different areas and sectors. We aim to be better prepared and more resilient to any kind of disasters. The updated Philippine Development Plan remains true to the socio-economic agenda of the administration and takes account of our international commitments, including the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals. More importantly, it continues to build a strong foundation for Ambisyon Natin 2040. In the first 3 years of implementing the Philippine Development Plan, several targets were achieved, and some were even surpassed. We were able to pass landmark economic, social, and governance reforms for much easier and faster delivery of services for the most vulnerable groups. Significant reforms have also been passed to ensure that our tax system is simpler, fairer, and more efficient, and that we have enough revenues to fund key programs.
Amid the overwhelming challenges brought about by the recent natural disasters and pandemic, I call on everyone's continued support, let us remain relentless in our pursuit of Ambisyon Natin 2040. The government assures everyone that it will be in the forefront of this journey.
Equipped with the many lessons learned from this difficult period, we will move forward as one healthy and resilient nation. Ituloy natin ang ating aksyon para sa ambisyon.
Hello mga kakorkada, alam niyo ba na pinakamababa ang Pilipinas kung ihahambing sa iba pang mga bansa sa Asia pagdating sa pagpasok ng Foreign Direct Investment o FDI? Ang Pilipinas kasi ay may pinakamahigpit na mga batas na sumasakal sa pagdaloy ng FDI sa bansa sa 10 na kasapi ng ASEAN at sa pang-63 na tala sa iba pang bansa noong 2015. Sa madaling salita, hindi nakakasabay ang Pilipinas sa pag-unlad ng mga karatig bansa sa Asia dahil sa mababang FDI nito mula 2008. Sa core, layunin natin na magkaroon ng bukas na ekonomiya na ang lahat ay may pag-asa. Proposal ng Task Force Core na tanggalin ang restriction sa ekonomiya sa pamamagitan ng pag-amyenda sa probisyon ng 1. Operasyon sa public utilities, 2. Pagpapatakbo ng mga institusyong pang-edukasyon at 3. Regulasyon pagdating sa mass media at industriya ng advertising. Kaya nirekomenda ng core ang paglalagay ng salitang unless otherwise provided by law sa kaukulang restriksyon na kasalukuyang nakatala sa ating saligang batas. Ito ang sagot sa mas maraming oportunidad, mataas na gross domestic product, maraming trabaho, malakas na infrastruktura, improved na ease of doing business at competitiveness sa bansa. Bukas na ekonomiya para sa lahat. Sa
A pleasant morning, everyone. Welcome to the 9th session of our series of economic fora on foreign direct investments and proposed economic amendments to the 1987 Constitution. And our subtopic for today will focus on the role of foreign direct investments in the growth of the Philippine agriculture sector. We have invited speakers that will be able to discuss these topics interestingly, and I'm excited that we can once again learn from this session on how our economy can rise despite the damages brought by the COVID-19 pandemic. This series is led by the Department of the Interior and Local Government, Center for Local and Constitutional Reform. I'm Christine Salgados, and I'll be with you as your moderator and host in today's forum. A few announcements as we begin our webinar. May I remind participants in this room will be able to interact through chat, and you should be able to find the chat box down at the bottom of your Zoom screens. We have a lot of participants, so to avoid confusion, panelists will see only videos of the moderator and of their co-panelists. So if you have questions, we highly encourage you to put them up in the chat box and we'll get as many as we can later during the open forum. Now, let us begin and pause for a moment of prayer.
Prayer Against COVID-19 by Bishop Ephraim Tendero. Our Almighty God, Creator of heaven and earth, we come before you today on behalf of our nation, the Philippines, now under extreme threat of the COVID-19. We praise you that you neither slumber nor sleep, and you are watching over our land and our people, especially in these perilous times. Our help comes from you. We cry out for your mercy and protection against this virus. We declare that you alone are our refuge, our place of safety. We pray that you protect our people from this deadly disease and rescue our land from this dangerous trap. Grant our President and all our national and local leaders wisdom and understanding as they establish and implement guidelines, measures, and strategies in fighting against COVID-19. Enable our health officials and medical personnel with your strength and power as they attend to the sick and vulnerable, and help many others to stay healthy. Lead the medical scientists here and around the world who are working double time to find the antidote to COVID-19. In these dangerous times, grant us your grace and peace to stay calm and to overcome fear, because the spirit of fear does not come from you. Instead, you have given us faith, hope, and love. You have given us power and a sound mind. Your word says that you will keep in perfect peace those whose eyes are fixed on you. Finally, we pray that in the midst of this pandemic, you will unite our people in love, bind our nation in peace, and bring hope and healing to our land with your grace and your power. In the name of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, we pray. Amen.
Now, to formally open this session, let us hear a message from the Undersecretary for Plans, Public Affairs, and Communication of the Department of the Interior and Local Government. Ladies and gentlemen, Undersecretary Jonathan E. Malaya. Good morning, sir.
Magandang umaga, Christine, and good morning to all of the participants to today's event, the series of economic fora, opening the economy for recovery and the role of foreign direct investment in the growth of the Philippine agriculture sector. Gusto ko lang pong batiin ang ating Secretary of the Department of Agrarian Reform, Secretary William Dar, sir. Magandang umaga po. Our good friend, Ms. Tonette de Jesus of the Konrad-Adenauer-Stiftung, our longtime partner in the series of economic fora, the Executive Director of the Center for Food and Agribusiness, Dr. Rolando D., Congressman David Suarez, the Congressman of the 2nd District of Quezon, and owner-entrepreneur of Villegas Organic and Hobby Ecotourism Farms, Mr. Pablito M. Villegas. Magandang umaga po at sa lahat po ng ating kasamahan sa DILG, in particular the Center for Local and Constitutional Reform led by Pamela Carbonell, and to all the participants. Magandang umaga po. Before I go through the meat of my speech, we all know that we are implementing the first, today is the second day of the implementation of the alert level system for Metro Manila. No? It means that this topic with which we are doing now, the opening up of the economy, is really a very opportune time for us to be able to doing this, no? Precisely because we went into the new alert level system as compared to the previous community quarantine classifications, because naabot na natin yung magandang level of vaccination dito sa Kamaynilaan. In fact, the latest reports for the National Capital Region shows that 86.8%, no? Malapit na pong mag-90, or 8.4 million, almost 8.5 million people in Metro Manila have had their at least a first dose. No? And kung titingnan natin yung naka-second dose, that's 6.184, meaning almost 7 million people or 63.2% have had a second dose. So ito pong significant accomplishment na ito has led to a decrease in our reproductive rate of the transmission of COVID-19 in the National Capital Region. So that gives us a confidence for us to move forward and open up further elements of the economy so that we can transition to a better and new normal. Now, that is for the short term. No? Things are looking up because I am confident that in the next month, maabot natin yung 75 to 80% vaccinated, fully vaccinated dito sa Metro Manila. In fact, yesterday, 500,000 jobs, half a million people were vaccinated in the entire country. So we are reaching our targets. No, we are on our way to recover from this pandemic. Sana no, wala nang mga karagdagang pang variants ang dumating, no, because yung Delta variant really was the showstopper sa atin. No, we were already doing well, but the Delta variant really made life difficult for us. So that is in the short term. The long term, of course, is the topic of today's event, which is amending the Constitution, in particular, the constitutional provisions of the economic provisions of the Constitution for long-term economic growth. No, kasi we're talking about short-term, itong vaccination natin, PDITR strategy, and there are some bills pending in Congress also for opening up the economy. But all of these things have limited impact if the Constitution itself is the major obstacle to economic growth. And the Constitution is a major obstacle to economic growth precisely because of the limitations it imposed upon ourselves way back in 1987. No, madami po tayong mga protectionist provisions which unfortunately is limiting our capital mobilization in the country. And unfortunately, the capital that we need is outside the country. And the more capital we get for our local domestic economy, the better it would be. And I think under this administration, we now have this opportune time to get this moving. Congress already passed the amendments to the economic provisions of the Constitution, and these are now pending in the Senate. And there is still time to get this moving. Hopefully, the members of the Senate should be able to act on this before the year ends para maisama po yung ang pag-amyenda sa Constitution in a plebiscite which we propose to be held together with the 2022 national elections. So yun lamang po. Again, let me thank and particularly thank our partners in this event, in particular the Konrad-Adenauer-Stiftung and the University of Asia and the Pacific and the other organizations. In particular, I'd like to thank Secretary William Darcer for joining us in this event. Magandang umaga po.
All right, thank you, Usec, for sharing us your time and providing us an overview of our current strides against the pandemic in our pursuit of reform agenda, and of course, of our topic for today. Thank you very much, sir, and good morning once again. Now, let us hear a message from one of our partners for the series of Economic Fora and a long-time partner of the DILG, in behalf of the Konrad-Adenauer-Stiftung, or CAS Philippines. Joining us today is their Senior Program Manager, Ms. Tonette De Jesus. Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning, Christine. Thank you. Good morning to our distinguished guests, colleagues, friends, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of Konrad-Adenauer-Stiftung, or CAS Philippines, I am pleased to be giving a message for this webinar, Opening the Economy for Recovery, the Role of Foreign Direct Investment in the growth of the Philippine agriculture sector. First and foremost, I would like to thank the Department of the Interior and Local Government, or DILG, for putting in the work to make this webinar possible. I'd also like to thank our other partners, the Center for Strategy, Enterprise, and Intelligence, the Development Academy of the Philippines, the Philippine Society for Public Administration, and Blueprint.ph. Thank you also to our speakers and presenters, the Department of Agriculture Secretary William Dar, DILG Undersecretary John Malaya, Executive Director for the Center for Food and Agribusiness, Dr. Rolando D., Owner-Entrepreneur of Villegas Organic and Hobby Ecotourism Farms, Mr. Pablito Villegas, DILG CLCR Project Officer, Ms. Pamela Carbonell, and our moderator for this webinar, DILG CLCR Senior Project Officer for Operations, Ms. Christine Salgados. And of course, thank you to Cassis Jerome Hogno for coordinating with the DILG. I don't have to emphasize this, but foreign direct investments in agriculture is crucial for the sector to become more vibrant and capable of high growth. A robust and high-growth Philippine agricultural sector strengthens our food security and our agri-food system, and ultimately reduces poverty, especially among our farmers and fisher folk. But historically, our agricultural sector has suffered from lackluster growth and development, even as our economy as a whole experienced sustained growth before the pandemic struck. And now, in the midst of the pandemic, the focus has moved towards ensuring that our food supply is continuously open and flowing, guaranteeing that our farmers have constant access to inputs and services pre-harvest, and helping food producers and employees avoid further income losses. So now more than ever, having a resilient and dynamic agricultural sector is critical in recovering from this pandemic. To successfully accomplish these, one of the integral steps the agricultural sector should take, or is taking, is to secure foreign direct investments to modernize the sector, promote agricultural exports, and develop infrastructure. And we are about to hear more on these as our resource persons talk to us about enhancing food production in an open economy and the futures of Philippine agriculture, and engage us in a discussion and Q&A. And with that, I hope you gain a lot of information, insights, and points for dialogue from this webinar. On behalf of Konrad-Adenauer-Stiftung, or CAS Philippines, thank you everyone for your kind attention, and good morning.
Thank you very much, Ms. Tonette, for your message and for posing some very interesting top points that we hope our panel of speakers can talk more about later during this the open forum. So moving on to the next part of this forum, our next guest for today first served as a Secretary of the Department of Agriculture in 1998. Despite the impact of El Nino during that time, the agricultural sector registered an unprecedented growth of 9.8%. Fast forward 21 years later, and he is once again called to serve the department and elevate the Philippine agri sector with his new and innovative approach of establishing a food-secure Philippines with prosperous farmers and fisher folk. Friends, ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome Secretary William Doliente Dar. Sir?
Yeah, maraming salamat po, Christine. And let me thank DILG and particularly Undersecretary for Plans, Public Affairs and Communication, si Usec Jonathan Malaya. At Jonathan, ako po ay si Manong Willie Dar na taga Department of Agriculture. Pero pwede na rin na taga Dar ako. Okay. Let me also recognize the Professor Dr. Stefan Jos, Country Director of the Konrad-Adenauer-Stiftung. Our friends who are also will be speaking during this important meeting, sila Rolly D, si Kong JJ Suarez, at saka si Pabs Villegas, mga katuwang po lahat sa pagpapaunlad ng sektor ng agrikultura sa ating bansa. Friends, ladies and gentlemen, magandang umaga po sa ating lahat. allow me to begin with a word of assurance. As it stands, the Filipino people are guaranteed adequate supply of safe, affordable food at all times amid the pandemic that we have today. It is our responsibility to ensure food security in the country in tandem with various stakeholders. The perfect storm of 2020 caused billions of pesos in revenue loss for the agriculture sector. There was the devastation brought on by a series of typhoons, the African swine flu epidemic, and a massive volcanic eruption in the southern Tagalog region. The emergence of COVID-19 served to worsen the severity of each of these challenges. The lockdowns, along with all the other necessary public safety measures, led to labor shortages as parts of the country's food systems were restricted in movement. This is a key chapter of the pandemic narrative around the world. Now, as the nation climbs out of recession and inches towards recovery, Department of Agriculture hammer home more exuberantly the targets of our flagship program, Plan, Plan, Plan. This year, we trained our sights on a reform agenda anchored on 18 key strategies to transform Philippine agriculture in the medium and long term. This agenda, therefore, also imagines a scenario where the pandemic is no longer the controlling circumstance. The reform agenda instantly redresses the idea of farming and fishing and the roles of farmers and fishers. They are professional entrepreneurs and businessmen, not subsistence stealers of parcels of land. We want them to think big. That's why our approach to agricultural development involves capacity building in all aspects of the country's food supply chain. And under the leadership of President Rodrigo Roa Duterte, we have devised development strategies that do just that. Our reform policy is held up on 4 pillars: modernization, consolidation, industrialization, and professionalization. Modernization replaces obsolete technologies and production techniques with newer, more innovative platforms, services, and opportunities to increase incomes across the food value chain and help build a more competitive agriculture sector. Here, we also emphasize unlocking technology transfers from different sources and stronger players, such as the private sector or foreign assisted development programs. Consolidation organizes farmer cooperatives and their holdings into clusters to ensure both a pooling of the resources and more efficient public investments in training, infrastructure, development, and other services. Only clustering and consolidation can allow us to reach the economies of scale necessary for an export-oriented economy and a thriving agri-food manufacturing industry. Industrialization adds value by promoting the large-scale production of goods and the fullest utilization of modern resources, information technology, and research for development in the food systems and in food production. All this helps to generate better employment, livelihood opportunities within the Philippine food systems. Professionalization provides both farmers and fishers and the public servants who oversee the development process, the education and training they need to meet the highest standards of qualifications to run agri-fishery operations. The quality of our human resource will build trust and confidence among partners abroad in our investment climate here. We are confident that this agenda will help the country's agri and fishery sectors recover from the drawbacks caused by the pandemic. They will also serve as a springboard for the national economy, not only providing it with a solid foundation for recovery, but also the momentum it needs for expansion. For the country to have a thriving and competitive manufacturing industry, the agriculture sector must be made more productive, resilient, and competitive. We are determined to create capital for the sector. Foreign direct investments are vital to this process. They are an integral part of an open and effective global economic system and a major catalyst for modernization and development. Foreign investments contribute to both factor productivity and income growth in host countries beyond what domestic investments, both private and public, would normally generate. Here is where decisive and immediate action is needed. Many of the laws and policies that currently govern foreign direct investments into this country's agriculture no longer serve the sector's present needs, unsuited as they are to the requisites of economic growth in a time of national crisis. I must emphasize 4 critical points in this regard. First, there is a need to review and adjust domestic policies to create an environment that attracts the most favorable investments, even as they protect the rights and interests of our citizens. Second, we need to create a new and more conducive national policy framework to further stimulate the flow of resources that can contribute to food security in the most critical stages of economic recovery. Third, we need to improve government support for the provision of fiscal, financial, technical, or technological investments conditioned under impact on sustainable development in this country. And fourth, we need an all-out effort to build and improve the physical infrastructure and digital connectivity, the infrastructure that makes investments in remote and vulnerable areas of our country more viable. We must do this in order to extend and expand the benefits of foreign investments to local farmers and fishers. The magnificent cooperation and sacrifice of the Filipino people has enabled us to make substantial progress in curbing inflation and in reinvigorating our economy over the past months. But the new prosperity the Duterte administration seeks can be completed only if find new ways to expand and increase investments into the agriculture sector. By working together and by building the trust and confidence of our friends and allies abroad, I'm confident we can fulfill that promise to the fullest. Maraming salamat mo. God bless us all.
All right, thank you very much, Secretary, for joining us this morning and for giving us important points to take note during this forum, particularly for the agricultural sector. Thank you very much, sir. Before we proceed to the introduction of our speakers, let us first have our poll question of the day. Our first poll question of the day: do you think allowing more foreign direct investments, or FDI, positively impacts Philippine agriculture industry? So please don't hesitate to key in your answers. We'd like to hear your voice regarding this advocacy. All right. While waiting for the results, allow me to recognize various DILG regional, provincial, municipal, and city directors, various schools and organizations, and the business and other business sector participants who are with us in this forum this morning. Okay. So we already have the results. 92% of you answered yes. Okay, resounding yes. 92% of you answered that it really positively impacts the Philippine agriculture industry, the FDI, positively impacts Philippine agriculture industry. So there you have it, our first poll result of the day. All right. Now we move on to give the floor to our first speaker of the day. He is a professor at the University of Asia and the Pacific, where he is also the executive director of its Center for Food and Agribusiness. He is the academic director and founder of the University of Asia and the Pacific Agribusiness Executive Program, director of the Philippine Chamber of Agriculture and Food, and consultant for the Center of Research and Communication Foundation, Incorporated. Known for doing industry, policy, and strategic studies, he has authored several books on agribusiness. We are pleased to have him this morning to talk about food production in an open economy. Ladies and gentlemen, let us all welcome Dr. Rolando D. Morning, sir. Dr. D is on mute. Dr. D.
Oh, I'm okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Okay. Last night, by the way, I grew up in Mindanao. First in Cotabato. Following that, we again migrated to Davao del Norte. So you can call me a blue-blooded Mindanaoan. Not royal, blue-blooded. Last night I was thinking about what's the impact of foreign investments on Philippine agriculture, which is lasting. I've done some research on agriculture. Number one, do you know that the Del Monte Philippines, formerly Philippine Packing Corporation, put up roots in the Philippines in Bukidnon around 1927-28. That's how long it is. And it has transferred to many owners. First, when the owners sold the property, the corporation to the Lorenzos. And later on, the ownership Filipino moved to Nutri-Asia, a Filipino company. A Filipino company. So Del Monte is responsible for making the Philippines a leading pineapple company, fresh and processed pineapple is due to the foreign investment. Many people do not realize that. In fact, I recall some of the group in the Philippines, some of the groups that paalis na yung mga foreigner na yan. Wala na, umalis na. Umalis na. In fact, let me go back later on because land reform has impact on land holdings, on economies of scale. Second, I remember flying from Davao City on DC-3 plane to General to South Cotabato, Pulumulok to be precise. And that was the time when they're still establishing the cannery, pineapple cannery in around 1962-64. Now it's still existing. It's still existing. Then the former owners of Dole Philippines sold out to a Japanese company. It's still there. It's run by Filipino managers, Filipino workers, in the same way that what is done in Del Monte operations in Bukidnon. Now this one is in South Cotabato, north-south. I remember the time. I remember the time because I took this BC-3 plane with some air pressure problem, and it is now 2021, and you started around 64. Sustained. Now, the policy change with the advent of land reform. These companies were agile. They decided to lease the land, from the workers' cooperative. To move on. Next. Let me talk about food security. Because easily 1/3, about 1/3 of our rural folks are poor. And food security means all peoples at all times have physical, social, economic access to sufficient food nutrition that meets the food preferences and daily needs for active and healthy life. This was formulated by UN Committee on Food Security way back in 1979. I just graduated from UP Diliman at that time and had no involvement in food security at all. Next. Let me show you Global Food Security Index. It is an annual assessment of food security through affordability, availability, quality, and food safety metrics by the well-known Economist Intelligence Unit. Alam ni Pabs yun. Alam ni Pabs Villegas yan. So, sadly, I rank it based on their criteria: overall affordability, availability, quality and safety, and natural resources and resilience. They added that later. Overall food security, the first is Singapore. Now, you ask a question, bakit number 1 ang Singapore? And the last is your motherland. Motherland, the last in food security. And one of the reasons is food is expensive in the Philippines. It's not easily available. Quality is safety is also a question. Indonesia and the Philippines are heavily affected by natural disasters. Why? Because we belong to the ring of fire. It is the countries in the Pacific region which is affected by typhoons, earthquake, tsunami, and the like. So Indonesia is volcanic eruption. So we have a challenge to take. Now, you compare that food security and insecurity. Poverty incidence in the Philippines is more than twice that of ASEAN. The total poverty in the Philippines, that was 2019 or something, was almost 22%. All Filipinos. This is based on national standard. While the rural poverty at that time estimated to have almost 30%. 30%. You see, for rural poverty, kulilat pa rin tayo, no? And I would attribute that to low productivity, whether it's factor productivity or land productivity and the like. For many years, an institution like UP Los Baños was quite well known. If you go to Start University, which I did 2 years ago, the founders of Start means Cassette is agriculture. 2 members of the royal family studied in UPLB in the 30s. Now, when I visited Vietnam, we met the daughter of the former president or chairman of Bank for Agriculture and Rural Development of Vietnam. Ang sabi sa akin, my dad here is a former president or executive vice president, finished masters or whatever in UPLB. That's why our visit there is welcome. Or welcome. I will allow Pablito Villegas to relate that another story, because I'm not an agriculture graduate. I'm a UP Diliman graduate. Unlearned agriculture hard knocks. Next, please. Let's have a good background. So, Philippine agriculture is about 1.8 billion, mainly crops, livestock, fisheries, and poultry. Next. And if you look at the sharing in 2020, palay dominates crops, although productivity of palay relative to ASEAN need like Vietnam, Indonesia is low. I have numbers here, but it will take a long time. And banana, which is a staple crop and a key export product. Poultry, of course, because we like to eat chickens, and we have also Muslim brothers who do not eat hogs. And fisheries, unexploited fisheries. We have a marine area in the Philippines, maybe six times bigger than the land area. Next. Outside of agriculture, direct agriculture, food processing contributes 10% of GDP. And without productive agriculture, you cannot have a competitive agro-industries. You can see that in some of the commodities we have, except for, let's say, oil, coconut oil. Some of our commodities is not competitive compared to other countries as raw material. Next, please. This is just, although the growth of agriculture in the past 5 years is anemic, and it was even worsened in 2021, it is still better, quote unquote, better off than industry and services. So it doesn't turn negative but compared to the two other sectors. Next. Now, the reason why I am for allowing foreign investments, let me discuss it later, in the Philippines, in order to globally competitive in export and in the local market, has to be productive. Now, not all small farmers can be productive. While you need scale to have access to technology, management, pooled credit, maraming factors. In fact, we had a farm in Davao. Just to show you that for many years we stuck to first rami, next is upland rice, later on irrigated by a pump by MRA. What happened after so many years? My parents have the land, the 10-hectare land leased to a dole contract grower. And since we are out of the Panabo area, we sold that land. We sold that land to the contract grower. Now, from subsistence, rice, corn, and even rami, it does the village is a major banana exporter of Cavendish. Banana exporter, and it is a labor employer. Okay. So this investment, the investment of lesser contract grower of dole has contributed to one of the bigger export of fresh products. In fact, it exceeds coconut because coconut is processed. Okay. But our export of about 7 billion is way beyond that of our peers. Malaysia, Indonesia, Vietnam, Thailand. Ang layo natin. Ang layo. Malaysia is close to 20 billion, thereabouts. Indonesian, Thailand is closer to 35-40 billion. Beyond that, 40 is Vietnam. So, wag kang madismaya, Paps, but it's the fact of life. No? And our imports keep on growing. And the import is wheat and soybean meal. It is not rice, it's our biggest import. We can address rice in the future if we make it productive. The reason why our imports exceeded export is our low productivity of agriculture. The equation states that. Next, please. Let me just suggest a few points here. Next. Now, can we make palay competitive? Of course we can. We have to avoid the hubris. The hubris that we're importing rice because why are we importing rice when this Vietnamese and Thai studied in Los Baños? That's a mirage. We import close to, let's say, 2 million tons, example. There's a scope for increasing yield and quality. And at competitive cost, sufficiency is within reach. Farm consolidation. I am a party, well, I helped the Mayor Eddie Guillen of Pidig, Ilocos Norte organize Sanhera, the old Spanish type irrigators association. From, don't remember now, but from one, that was more than 5 years ago, from one Sanhera is about 100 farmers, 100 hectares. Okay. Do you know that there's now 2,000 farmers, 2,000 farmers comprising about 20 sanjeras, but it is a total value chain engagement, and the yield rose from less than 4 tons per hectare per harvest. Now for good seeds, now it's 6.5 tons per hectare per harvest, and for hybrid up to 8.5 tons per hectare per harvest. So what is the implication of this? It has dramatically reduced poverty in Pidig, Ilocos Norte. We just gone through the Olympics. The twin medalist is El Diponso, who hails from Pidig. Yeah. If you go there, there's a monument for him. So I am for farm consolidation, but there should be liberal treatment of farm. You see the key here is not owning land. Ayan ang objective ng land reform, owning land. The point is that access to land. And the key here is scale. Di naman bago yan. Taiwan started in earnest in 70s. Malilit yung mga farm doon, but sinira yung mga boundaries para ayos yung irigasyon. Then I got involved in farm consolidation in Malaysia in the 80s. I led the appraisal mission of Felcra in the 80s. Today, it's a thriving community with very almost nil poverty. 2,000 consolidated rice farms, and another 6,000 hectares of consolidated oil palm in the hillside. Okay, and the division of profit is based on the attributed farm holdings compared to the total. Next. Now, very sad, our coffee demand is growing, but most are supplied by imports. Beans from Vietnam, and a lot of the coffee core sachet comes from Indonesia. And to think, Indonesia has similar weather patterns as us. And Vietnam, it's 1 hectare farm before, but they do. I visited Bunmatut, the center of coffee farming, and the site of Western Highlands Research Center. The yield of Vietnam is up to 2.5 to 3 tons beans per tree, compared to ours, which is have to 1 kilo per tree. So ang layo natin. Ang layo. Now, Nestle broke this certification program with premium, which started way back in Vietnam for a long time. Next. So, mayroon bang hope dyan? Of course, meron. Meron. Next. Yeah, obvious yan. Obvious cabinet banana. In fact, all bananas, because we're talking about Saba, we talk about banana chips, for example. Philippines is banana is better than the cup of the Philippines. It is second after Ecuador and comprised 20% of global production. Of course, this Vietnamese and also pirated Filipino expert to plant bananas in Vietnam or Indonesia. Next. As I said, ang tagal na ng pinya sa Pilipinas. 1927, started by Philippine Packing Corporation, 100% foreign owned. Oh, nawala na yung mga kano. Pilipino na nagpapatakbo dyan. So sustainable. Sustainable. Kasi meron silang land lease. Nag-release na lang sa teleworkers. Next please. Ito ang unexploited product. I take BCO in the morning. I take my coffee together with BCO powder. And I agree with my colleagues in UP LB based camp. Pollution and Agricultural and Modernization of the Philippines, headed by former Secretary Edil Javier, that the farmers cannot rise out of poverty on the basis of okra. Kasi unang-una, mababa ang productivity. But there are other factors. Other factors. You can next. Ganda ng potential, pero dito pabayaan. So there are many challenges ahead. But the major challenge now is African swine fever and climate change. Climate change is a challenge even in many advanced countries. In the United States, finally, President Biden woke up to the importance of climate change as the future for the future. Next. So what are some of the key drivers? I'm happy about the pillars of Secretary Dar, whom I have known him since he was executive director of Picard. I tracked him, he moved to Bar, he moved to acting secretary, then he honed a skill in International Center for Research and Arid Tropics in Hyderabad, India. Pinalaki niya ang resources ng ECRISAT. Okay, land access, definitely. One of these partial solution to land access is farm consolidation clustering under central management. Ito yung model ng Malaysian model. Productivity. Ang baba ng productivity natin. Management. Madali kayo sabihin na kawawa naman yung mga farmer. Pero turuan mo. I-manage mo. Tsaka, kung half a hectare lang, paano ba kung economies of scale? Now, if you have organization, you can imbibe yung financing, mass crop insurance, all these machinery, including drones, combined harvester. So in effect, you'll be planting similar varieties, say 1 or 2, so that brought to the rice mill, it has very high recovery. Very high recovery. To end this, can we move to the last slide? Yeah, this is the time shift from food security to nutrition security. Will increase health and well-being. Don't ask me the question. You ask the Pablito Villegas about this nutrition security. And from food security to nutrition security, catalyze appropriate focus and policies, not just for food, but for health and nutrition. I think I end my talk. Thank you for this opportunity.
All right. Thank you very much, sir, for that insightful talk on the extent of food production output in agricultural development. Interesting data presented there on production demands and challenges. We hope to discuss more about the potentials of our food production later in the open forum. So at this juncture, let's have another poll question, please. Okay, for a second poll question. Do you agree that in order to recover from the economic damages brought by the COVID-19 pandemic, it is necessary that the Philippines ease its economic restrictions in the 1987 Constitution? All right. So please don't hesitate to key in your answers. While waiting for the results, allow me to recognize the presence of various participants in this economic forum. We have with us the mayor of Gumaca, Mayor Webster Letargo, Mayor Teodulo Campo of the municipality of Cardona, Mayor Estrelina Aguinaldo of Santa Prajedes, Assistant Director Bien Janine Balocating of the Department of Foreign Affairs, and the Director for Office of International Economic Relations of the DFA, Mr. Chad Jacinto. Good morning po sa inyong lahat. Okay, the results are in. About 52% of you answered agree. And about 44% of you strongly agreed that it is necessary to ease economic restrictions, while 2% of you does not have an opinion. All right, thank you for your answers. So, We move on to our last speaker for the day. He has a bachelor's degree in agriculture and a master of science in agricultural economics and agribusiness. He is also a practicing agroecological and organic agriculturist and integrated coconut-based and agroforestry farmer. His expertise and assignments are focused in ASEAN countries, the Asia-Pacific region, and Southern, Central, and Western Africa. We are very grateful to have him today to share his special knowledge and expertise in agriculture in the context of foreign investment. So, let us all welcome Mr. Pablito M. Villegas. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, good morning. Maraming salamat po. Maraming salamat, Christine. Maraming salamat po, Usec Jonathan Malaya. I can still see Secretary Darder and my good friend Rolly. Good morning. Well, I have been asked I will try to give justice to this topic, which is very, very difficult. The futures of Philippine agriculture. So, where are we now? Where are we now? No? Well, as Secretary Dar has indicated, we have been in quarter recession, 5-quarter recession, and finally we are now growing in Q2 2021. No, so and then, but it is quite. At the very least, Ms. Tonette was indicated that about the anemic growth of the agriculture sector, maybe in the last 2 to 3 decades, mainly because of the low priority given to the sector. And I agree with Secretary Dar, and we all agree that there is scrimpy and very low budgeting or low priority given to agriculture is really a big pain in the sector. So necessarily, we will not be surprised that our sector has been growing very, very slow and practically in an anemic fashion. And below par management system, maybe in the past, no, coupled with, about alleged mismanagement and corruption in the past. But I know now that Secretary Dar is a man of integrity, and these things, if ever happen, will be a very, very minimal and happening maybe at the lower edge of management system of DA. So in the past 3 more decades, the agriculture and fishery sector is highly underperforming. For the second, I think within the umbrella of Secretary Dar's plant program and his banner programs, we are very pleased that at least the crop sector has grown well. No, normally the underperforming crop sector has grown very well despite typhoons and calamities. No, but sorry state because to the Asia, the African swine, the livestock, particularly the hog sector has really registered a negative growth. No, so the decline of 1.5% in the second quarter. So let us now see that the overall, but when you look at the overall performance of the sector, as Rolly has indicated, clearly put it up, we have a food system that is highly import dependent, with almost 20 billion agricultural trade. The ratio of imports to export is at the rate of 2 to 1, meaning about 600 billion imports to only about more than 300 billion domestic production. So this is the ratio now is really very alarming. We import twice than what we export. So, but overall, I would say that we have attained some level of food sufficiency, but as my friend Kofi has indicated, Rolly, we are importing a lot of coffee, onions, peanuts, mongo, and even beef, no, and tuna. It's amazing. It's unfortunate that even tuna, which is really prevalent in our archipelago islands, is being imported by our country. Okay. But where are we now in terms of self-sufficiency? Well, I would like to say that many of these products, we are self-sufficient in coconut, sugarcane, cocoa, banana, pineapple, mango, cassava, mostly the sweet potato and root crops, eggs, tilapia, shrimps. Okay, so we are not really that bad, but how we are able to transform these products into high value agriculture and agribusiness, no? So that production systems, so that is the issue. How do we make it both for food security and also for export? So opportunities for expanding and diversifying domestic production and export trade will be hopefully a trust given the 8-point pillars, the strategy that Secretary there, but unfortunately, most probably will be staying there only up to the end of June. So we hope that the next administration will be able to pick this up so that the momentum that is being created by the DA now will be sustained. So next is, how about we have been the double our participation in the WTO, World Trade Organization, particularly in agreements in agriculture, has been questioned. No? So how are we faring in our WTO? WTO, please. Next one. Next. Okay. But let me quote, let me give you the other side of the coin. Dr. Walden Bello spoke very recently in the Development Bank of the Philippines, and his theme was, the Philippine agriculture is dying. What will it take to save it? Okay. He quoted further, the Philippine agriculture has been transformed from self-sufficient and self-reliant agricultural economy into a highly import-dependent one. We become the dumping ground for cheap and maybe low quality and malnutritious imports from countries with high agricultural subsidy. I think this is another area that we are importing from countries which subsidize their agriculture heavily. The United States to the tune of almost $47 billion in 2020. European Union to the tune of 50 billion euros. And even Thailand and Vietnam are subsidizing the rice production, to the tune of $450 per ton in the case of Thailand, and Vietnam $236 per ton. So these things are not happening in our country. So that is the reason why we have so scrimpy in supporting our food self-sufficiency programs. And he further said that this is already a case of agrocide, given the open market mindset, believing that we are staying in an economy that has a perfect market condition, which is not the case. And according to him, the anti-agriculture bias of technocrats and economists, of course, not including Secretary Dar, with high dependence on food imports as their tool on food security. So, ergo, shall we continue to rigidly follow WTO impositions? No? Or shall we make witty and calibrated adjustments? Is there a progressive future for Philippine agriculture? Okay? Then Rolly already elaborated on this, but let me just emphasize whether safe and nutritious food for active and healthy life is part of our monoculture agrochemical-based agricultural system. So, when you put chemicals, when you put poisons into our food system, then we are not satisfying the definition of producing safe and nutritious food for active and healthy life. I think Rolando was saying from food to nutrition security is the name of the game now. But I will not elaborate on this. Let me proceed. So essentially, we have a dysfunctional food and agricultural system. So this is where you have massive poverty in the countrysides to the tune of about, very high, 22% level or more of poverty, leading to food insecurity, hunger, and malnutrition. When you have malnutrition, our people have poor physical and cognitive. And so the cycle goes on, low income and leading to poverty. And this is basically the dysfunctionality of our food and agriculture system. Okay. So another issue here is the dysfunctional and unsafe to unhealthy food system can be attributed to the loss of food, culture, and diversity. We have lost our traditional bahay kubo cropping and traditional indigenous food in our healthy diet. I used to enjoy this when I was young, before the onset of fast food. Consumption of high refined carbohydrate, the fast food system now, rather than the slow food that our people have been enjoying in the past. The prevalent consumption of unwanted convenience food, junk food, unhealthy, poison food, and bad food habits of our people now, particularly the millennials. The triple burden of malnutrition, undernutrition, micronutrient deficiency, and overnutrition. So these are really the effects of dysfunctionality of us producing unsafe and unhealthy food for our people, where 67% of our households do not meet calorie requirement. This is further worsened by the COVID-19 pandemic, further worsened. So the socioeconomic effects, disruption in the access of families to food, breakdown in the food systems, logistics and distribution, and this adversely affect availability and affordability. While on the production side, the reduced productivity and disrupted flow of goods, primary and manufactured goods and essential goods. Another thing, let me go to the chemical-based monocultural agriculture, dominated by rice, corn, and coconut smallholding. Monoculture, not polyculture, so that we can optimize productivity and income coming from the same land. We have the case of aging farmers and fisher folks, 57 years old, the poorest among the poor, as Rolly Diaz emphasized. They are highly exploited with no social protection. It's about time our farmers will be given SSS, PhilHealth, Pag-ibig funds. I saw that Secretary Dar in his cluster program is trying to put these things into the health, of our farmers, into the health and social protection system of our farmers. So the pervasive insecurity of land tenure and property rights and the persistent inequalities and risks, debilitating prices and price signals. The problem is if our farmers will receive the right price signals, then our farmers will produce because it will be in their own advantage to do so, because that is something that will lift them up from poverty. So the persistent inequalities and risks, the farmers have practically are price takers. How do we reverse this? The farmland conversion into mixed use and real estate development amidst, so much idle land, so many speculators trying to control the use of prime agricultural lands. And worse, the dismal failure of agrarian reform with low budgetary support to agri sector, less than 4% of the proposed 2022 budget. I think this was raised very, very recently by Secretary Dar, whether he's happy or not. And of course, well, to a certain extent, you're happy that his budget was approved, but not the real budget that he was proposing. And this is exactly what we will be fighting for in a regime of good management and good programs at the Department of Agriculture that Secretary Dar has laid out, has particularly laid out. Another source is really we have fish-rich seas and the West Philippine Sea, they are under foreign control and oligopolistic maneuvers, oligopolistic control. Again, another issue here is the irrigation for rice under the run of the river policy. Why we, instead of watershed or river basin approach, irrigated areas remain stagnant at 1.2. This is I used to know this because I was in the cabinet in the staff of Secretary Tangco then, where we are already irrigating about 1 to 1.2 million hectares of land, and that remains stagnant up to now. Well, another thing, the NIA is not under the Department of Agriculture, and hopefully it should be done in the next future, in the early next future. So we are focused primarily on irrigating rice fields, rice lands, which is particularly a low value commodity. And in fact, we must reduce consumption of rice because this is a source of many problems, many cardiovascular diseases, like diabetes and other cardiovascular, high blood and many others because of too much consumption of rice. So we need to redesign our irrigation system in order to make it more or less in sync or compatible with the needs or the requirements of high value agriculture and food production system. And finally, this is where the area, I used to be vice president of the Land Bank of the Philippines during our times, during the 1980s, 70s, and 80s. Now, the limited access to agriculture credit and rural finance. Okay. Another worse situation that we can build is the existing multi-layered supply and logistic chains that are highly oppressive, they are highly exploitative, and they are anti-smallholders and consumers. So you can see here how the agricultural goes locally, where the farmers and peasant folks are merely price takers, and they are normally victims of interlinked informal credit market squeeze. No, so they are really in a tight squeeze because the middlemen, the money lenders, are giving them credit in exchange for commodities that are being bought at very, very low prices. So you have there a double whammy with respect to the farmers being a price taker. Okay. So how do we respond to this? How do we address now the food import dependency and the empirically documented adverse effect of WTO compliance and the low budgetary support to agriculture? Okay. Firstly, we need to urgently revisit. I think the Secretary of Agriculture must immediately revisit and recalibrate W agreements in agriculture. It's simple. My friends in PKP just are very strongly suggesting that they just follow the USA, the Thailand, the Vietnam response measures, and we will be all right. They have been, giving subsidy, and they have been skirting, some restricted by some witty measures that protects their agriculture sector. So another thing is how do we significantly increase budgetary donor and private sector investment in agri research and development and extension services, agri logistics, rural and market. This is what Secretary Dar is trying to advocate, and hopefully this must be funded very well by this government and the next government to come. And to me, the progressive transition from chemical-based to natural, organic, and agroecological agriculture. I am with the International Federation of Organic Agriculture Movement. I was one of the major lobbyists in the passage of Organic Agriculture Act of 2010, and I fully agree that from food security to nutrition security and to more healthy people, that is the way forward for agriculture in the future to go. Okay. Another issue is, I would like now to tackle the future of agriculture in terms of a demand and supply management approach. So, the first thing that we have to do is consumer awareness. Consumer awareness and education. The information education campaign now at all levels of education and the positive societal behavioral change. We have to highlight the significance of food culture with affection and natural and safe food, biodiversity, self-reliance, mutual health and benefit, under our bayanihan system. And the revival of the traditional food culture, bahay kubo cropping, eating more bananas, coconuts, starchy roots and tubers, rather than eating rice, no, maybe corn to a certain extent because it has low glycemic, the yellow corn. And adoption of community supported where the consumers themselves, like the CSA of USA, TEKI of Japan, where they are providing support, direct support to the farmers so that they will be given, organic, safe, and clean, healthy food. And more importantly, again, to address malnutrition, we must ensure that the school feeding, the nutrition support to food pregnant mothers and newly born child up to 1,000 days, up to 3 years old of our youngsters must be provided by government because they are the future intelligent Filipinos. If they are not given that, then they will be, less brainy and maybe a disservice to our society. So responsible. So when I said shifting from unhealthy food diet, malnutritious food, we internationally, we now have the concept of planetary health diet, which means responsible consumption of plant-based foods. So I have mentioned that fruits, vegetable, nuts, reduce 50% or more consumption of rice, wheat. So you will see, we have been importing about 3 billion worth of dollars for rice and also wheat, and even maybe some other forms. But that's $3 billion that we can save if we will reduce consumption of rice. No, diversification of diet away from rice in favor of the planetary health diet. This will stimulate farm dynamism, diversification and polyculture farming in response to new price and market signals for healthy, wellness, and nutritious food. Okay, the use, as Secretary Dela has emphasized, digital technology so that in a genuine science data, so that consumers will have the option to choose the food they want to eat. And in COVID times, consumption of healthy, nutritious, fresh, and nutritionally processed packed food distribution rather than the standard noodles, the canned foods, that are less healthy. And so we must be able to utilize, invite the proactive national government and LGU procurement system under the Sagip-Saka law can be involved, or the intensive use of mobile and cloud digital kitchens, selling organic, halal, kosher, pesticide-free, animal welfare compliant, and farmer-friendly food, so that we can stimulate more demand, more consumer demand, so that our agriculture will keep moving and vibrant. Okay, now let me look at the supply side of the agriculture system. This means a shift, transformative and regenerative climate smart farming system that the Secretary is also trying to propagate or to promote. But we need now to shift our agriculture system from rice, corn, coconut monoculture and the use of chemical-based production system in rice and corn and even vegetables to a more diversified polyculture, artisanal or micro-farm using natural, agroecological, and organic micro-farming systems, both in urban and peri-urban centers. And here comes, this is one of my special expertise because I was World Bank, working in Indonesia as a World Bank agro-based industrial, expert and clustering expert and value chain expert in Indonesia in the 2000-2001. And I'm happy that the Secretary is now promoting and has even invited me to advise him on agriculture and agro-based industrial clustering development within the supply and value-added chains. This will promote economies of scale and adequate supply of raw materials that will be needed by industries, by manufacturing industries, where agriculture production now, they will become major growth driver as supplier of raw material and going to processing and primary, secondary, and tertiary processing, with where foreign direct investment and donors funding will make a big difference. Okay. So, how do we catalyze? As Secretary Dar indicated, the foreign direct investment will have a catalytic effect on agriculture. And with conducive policy and strategy environment, then we will be able to propel agriculture to a higher growth of performance. And the funds needed will be supplied mainly by the private sector and the donors. So these are areas where the foreign direct investment can be had. Irrigation for polyculture diversified farming, investment in agro-based industrial clusters, focus on new agriculture staples. New agriculture staples. De-emphasize rice in favor of planetary health diet and high-value commodities for export trade. As Rolly has indicated, we must able to reverse the 2-to-1 ratio and maybe put it on a 1-to-1 and eventually 2-to-1 ratio in favor of export vis-a-vis imports. The agriculture and market infrastructure that Secretary Dar was talking about, the decentralization of agri infrastructure, logistics, cold and chain and dry chains, farm to market roads, overall agricultural infrastructures, joint venture in agro-based industries and agribusiness, investment in anchor firms and small brothers, big small brothers partnership in agri development projects. This is part of the programs of Secretary Dar, and investment in digital or physical infrastructure and digital connectivity. So there are many of those within the realm of your port and industrial and fifth industrial revolution technology system. Okay. Another issue here is this is really more on the game changers with the use of digital connectivity. So basically, we will the transform. We will how will this structure? What will be the future pathways of Philippine agriculture? So next please. The future pathways will be, well, we have done this in a contest which was headed by NAST with Professor Dr. Rasco as our team leader. And there are 3 pathways that we have defined there. The number 1 is the agro-industrial cluster farms. Number 2 is the high-tech urban agriculture farms. We have defined mechanisms here, but because of time constraint, I will not be able to elaborate on it. And the artisanal farms or the micro farming that I am very, very, robust in adapting it. Next, please. So the value chain, this is another business model. We really have to run to a future agriculture system through the value chain approach. And it has to be operationalized by trying to really look at the connectivity of inputs and outputs, where we are able to really revolutionize production technology, the pre-production, production, post-harvest, up to processing, where this will be controlled, and more or less where farmers will benefit on it. So the value chain approach must be interlinked and designed to make the best possible product or service that will be pro-farmer and giving the farmers, agribusiness and enterprise a competitive edge, a competitive advantage in the marketplace. I have developed, particularly when I was with the Land Bank, how I was working. I call it the CPM, how I'm able to link my credit supply with production technology, as I told you, pre, post, and up to processing, and also the market. So you will see here that the producers now will have to be linked with the end users. And everything here will be service providing. There must be consolidation. There must be orchestration of all services facilities that will be supportive of the producers, supportive of the farmers, fisher folks, agripreneurs, cooperatives, and their associations or their cooperative corporate enterprises. Going to primary processing as much as possible and invoking agribusiness management systems that will lead to end users, where processors, exporters, institutional market, consumers, so there will be inclusive and cheap inclusive finance that will support them, and through marketing through direct and online digital marketing scheme. So that this model will endeavor to shift the market power from traders, informal money lenders, and middlemen to food producers themselves, where decentralized rural finance under credit production technology market linkages will operate. I think this is a basic model. I have successfully done this in the land bank when I was at the helm in the 70s and the 80s. But I retired very early, so I was not able to continue and support it, upscaling it for the whole nation. No. So, what are the challenges on small? Because small is beautiful. So, but what are the challenges here? The anti-agricultural bias of technocrats and economists is turning the countryside into wasteland because farmers are not responding to proper price signals. The farmers are exploited. So the resulting in unabated conversion of fertile farmlands into real estate and mixed-use investments, where money is flowing, where there is high profit. But shall we, trade off high profit potential vis-a-vis the need for food security, the need for nutritious food among our people? So, and then the pandemic, everything. How do we halt? How do we stop the seemingly pervasive agrocides and anti-agricultural mindsets that now lead to unhealthy, neglected, stagnant agriculture with highly exploited folks with no or benefit social protection? Can we shift this market power from agri-exploiters to atomistic, many, and toiling agri-producers? Can we give them full access to rural finance? Can we give them full access to lucrative markets? Can we make micro-farming a viable food, nutrition, and health security enterprise, as Rolly has emphasized, for sustainable food systems and a circular rural economy of well-being, working very well in the countryside, in the community, for community and household food security? Next. So this is the small is beautiful mindset. The socialized micro-farming and farm tourism enterprise system that I am now doing in my own little way. And this is already empirically proven by dynamism of agriculture industries and the rising, economies of Taiwan, Japan, Korea, Thailand, Indonesia. Mangopya na lang po tayo na alam na po na ano po bang ginawa ng mga Taiwanese dyan, ng Hapon, ng Koreano, at yan po mga tao niya, lalo na po yung sinasabi ng taga-Taiwan, sinasabi ng taga-Thailand, sinasabi ng taga-Vietnam, ay sila ay natuto to advance agriculture. So they have majors of agriculture for, transforming their economies to industrialized or economies. So we need to provide full access to credit, markets, and holistic extension service. The program that Secretary has dedicated is a holistic provincial agricultural fishery extension system. This must be done. The linkage of markets, I already told, the CPM linkage that I'm talking. And of course, the investment, PPP, and also the internal revenue allotment under the Masagana Doctrine. We would like farmers to be assured of 15,000 to 30,000 income per month. This will liberate them from poverty. Coming from where? From on-farm, ano yung tinatanim sa lupa nila? Off-farm, ano yung pwede nilang gawin? Livestock, fisheries, or whatnot. Processing, small business, and non-farm enterprise, plus farm tourism and decent housing. And their integration into the MMSC and labor, formal labor sector with social inclusion and protection system. Next, please. So let me just show you that I have done this. These are these. About the next, please. And then I have done this in my own little way, the Villegas Organics Farm Complex, my farm model here, investments, and of course, my agripreneurship model is now working, where I now have about 5 or 6 agripreneurs working directly with me and under a profit sharing scheme. Okay, so let me go to the other parts, how do the agro-based agriculture clustering will work, because I think that's the problem now, where the need to make it work. So this means that we will have now to restructure the macro level, because the previous one is I restructure the micro level management of dysfunctional food and agriculture system via a manufacturing-based agro-industrialization. Secretary Dar has emphasized that, but I'm just giving some plus to to it. So corporate farming, cooperative-based consolidated farm and services development. Actually, what we are consolidating are the vital services that are serving the agriculture sector and the farmers and the agro-processing investment as social enterprise for development. So you will in this model, the interplay, the interconnection, the strong interface between agriculture and industry, where agriculture will provide the technology, the farm inputs, and they will provide the raw material for industry sector, the primary processing. But this will now be on the concept of agri-based industrial clusters. No, agri-based industrial cluster and supply and value-added chain optimization. Okay, so next year is the core industries. Here, the combined agriculture and processing will be focused on domestic market, so export market. The core industries will focus on comparative advantage of location, factor endowments, farm clusters, while the competitive advantage will focus on market, composition of products, and also the right pricing of products, so that it will provide the right price signals for the farmers to respond very well. And of course, more importantly, is the presence of linkage with supplier industries, particular inputs, supporting, facilitating allied and related industries within the agro-based industrial cluster. So the Secretary indicate the economic foundation, the policy environment, the factor condition, the soil, technology, research and development extension, supplier industries, financial services, marketing, export, mentoring, coaching, and capacity building. These are all indicated in these 8 pillars of agricultural strategy. So let me now proceed with my conclusion. Foremost, the Philippines, through the Department of Agriculture and Department of Trade and Industry, along with the DOST, must revisit its policy and regulatory commitments under WTO and its agreement on agriculture, with the end in view of reversing its food and agriculture import dependency towards a more sustainable, productive, we're creating self-reliant food production and agriculture system where nutrition will be given top priority. Under the private public sector partnership, next, we must be able to restructure the highly import-dependent and dysfunctional food system towards food, nutrition, and health security and wealth creation, poverty reduction. And with passion and social responsibility, inclusive agribusiness and entrepreneurship through the socialized micro farming and farm tourism and industry system, my micro farming model will generate livelihood and employment generation ventures. And these are highly doable, provided under private-public partnership with LGU participation, Mandana's funding doctrine, and to a certain extent, foreign direct investment. We advocate for sustainable agriculture, food and nutrition, with humane and decent housing for our farmers, family-based entrepreneurship, and optimal application of digital technology in a community-based circular economy with the very least carbon footprint. So we need to restore biocubo cropping and all the next, please. The way forward, gentlemen and ladies, I hope that all of us will continue to adapt innovations and creativeness with commitment to the effective restructuring of food and agriculture system and its agro-based industries that will lead us to an effective management execution. I think we are very good in planning, and that is what our friends in ASEAN have been telling us. They have been copying our models. They have been succeeding very well, while we are not, because the management systems, particularly the professional management systems, are not inputted into the whole dynamics of managing the food and agriculture system. So we have given you the challenges and opportunities in reforming the dysfunctional and highly import dependent system, food system. The time has come for us to act and contribute to getting agriculture moving through a sustainable, social responsible. I mean, now there's to be done at the national level, at the mess or community level, and the micro or the farming level, where micro farming, agro-industrial manufacturing enterprise system with public sector modalities and foreign direct investments can work together. So political will, FDIs, with political will and FDIs will be able to catalyze the whole process of agricultural structuring in our country. The other side of the coin is the looming food crisis in terms of unsustainable and costly food imports. We are already borrowing a lot of money to sustain us from this pandemic. So there may be probable food shortages and severe food and nutrition insecurity under COVID-19 crisis if this will not stop. And the continuing setbacks, as our critics have indicated, under the existing WTO AA regime, particularly the controversial rice tariffication scheme. This is a tall order for all of us, where public-private sector partnership modalities are indispensable in order to address the challenges of food import dependency and dysfunctional food systems. Finally, the future of agriculture is like a newborn egg. My favorite is, the bird in our hands. Shall we nurture that bird for future generation to treasure and enjoy? Or shall we squeeze its neck so that young bird will die? So the future of agriculture depends on us. So shall we proceed accordingly and pursue a progressive future for a vibrant, transformative, and regenerative Philippine agriculture? As my favorite Secretary of Agriculture then, my mentor, Secretary Arturo R. Tanco Jr., put it in the 1970s during the Marcos time. As agriculture goes, so goes the nation. Thank you po. Maraming salamat and good day. Thank you po.
Thank you very much, sir, for that very interesting talk and for sharing comprehensive information and updates on the current state of our agricultural sector. Hope we all learned new information on the limitations and prospects in our agri sector as presented by Mr. Villegas, especially as we strive to move in the direction of an open economy. So many interesting points raised there, especially on food culture shift via organic agriculture. Thank you very much, Mr. Villegas. Now moving on to our last poll question of the day. Can we have our poll question, please? All right. So for our last poll question, do you agree that opening up the agricultural sector to foreign investors will allow the Philippines to enhance food security and open new opportunities to its stakeholders? All right, there you have it. So don't hesitate to key in your answers. Again, thank you to all our friends from the academe, the civil society sector, regional to field offices of various NGAs, business groups, and all relevant sectors who are with us in this forum. I may not mention everyone, but please be informed that our secretariat has duly noted all your registration details. Thank you once again. Okay, so we have the results. About 58% of you agreed that opening up the agricultural sector to foreign investors will allow the Philippines to enhance food security, while 36% of you strongly agreed. 4% of you do not have an opinion. So thank you very much for your participation in all our poll questions today. Also, we'd like to thank our speakers for all your knowledge and insights on our topic this morning. I know our participants here in the Zoom room, as well as those watching via Facebook Live, are excited to raise their questions. So let us begin the open forum. I'd like to encourage everyone to post your questions in the chat box, and we will take note of all your queries. I noticed that we have friends from the media here with us. Should you want to ask questions, kindly press the raise hand button at the bottom of your screen, and our secretariat will coordinate with you to have your mic turned on so we can recognize you. So joining us today as panelists in this open forum are Dr. Rolando D. and Mr. Pablito Villegas. Welcome again, sirs. It looks like we already have a lot of questions from our participants today, especially because this is a very important discussion. We are talking about a very important sector in our society, which is the agriculture. So let's start off with Miss Anne Jark question. Miss Anne asked, maybe the increase of crop and livestock diseases mentioned by Dr. D can be an advantage if we can figure out how to execute some sort of agricultural product bio-quarantine. Is this something we should be trying to take advantage of? Sir?
I think I suggest Pabs to answer that because it's a bio-based pest control.
Go
He's
ahead, sir.
the agriculture guy.
Question.
Okay, sir, again, I will repeat the question. Maybe the increase of crop and livestock diseases, which is linked to climate change, as mentioned by Dr. D, can be an advantage if we can figure out how to execute some sort of agricultural product bio-quarantine. Is this something we should be trying to take advantage of?
Yeah, yes, I think Secretary Dar has already, I think Secretary Dar is still here. Is he still here? No. I think the Secretary is the best position to answer that because when you talk of bio-quarantine, as the DA through Secretary Dar has done it for, addressing this African swine flu, no? So that is a very brainy approach by the veterinarians, and I think this biosecurity system now is very critical to be set up in our archipelagic country, no. So, but it will need a lot of investment as well. I think that is the handicap of the DA, that there are not much money being put into. We have a very porous country, no, many entry and exit points. So this will entail a lot of expenses and a lot of critical thinking to be able to do it, in a very cost-effective manner. I think the Secretary is still around, so maybe we can ask for his views on that.
Is the Secretary around still?
Or is his staff?
Anyone from the Secretary's side? I don't think he's available at the moment, sir. All right. But thank you, sir. Thank you so much for that answer. Again, we have another question from Mr. Amado Sabio from Facebook. This is directed to Dr. D and Secretary Dar if he's around. Isn't globalization the reason why Ilocandia has become over-dependent on the farming of Virginia tobacco? The farmers I know in Region 1 are so dependent on tobacco that their only alternative crop is corn. And so they're vulnerable to local trade monopolies. If we become more dependent on FDIs, how do we prevent it from having a similar effect of overdependence or overemphasis on future regional agricultural production? So he is specifically asking, sir, about the tobacco monopoly, I guess. Yes, go ahead, sir.
I'm familiar with the taxation of Virginia tobacco. If I were an Ilocano farmer planting rice in the wet season, and of course tobacco in the wet season, there is a rationale for that. Do you know that the RA 7171, they tax the tobacco leaf at something like 600 pesos per kilo. So, yeah, bumabalik yan. Bumabalik yan sa local communities, on provincial, municipal, tsaka local communities. So, pag nawala yung tobacco fund na yan, ay mawala din yung support. Kasi, nagiging source for projects yan. That's a source for project. Tsaka hindi naman ba ganun kalaki ang tobacco. This Virginia tobacco farm na naman dyan kasi sa Northern Luzon is Burley and native. Ang malaki isa sa Ilocos is rice. But there is complementation kasi. Wet season, irrigated rice yan. Pero during the dry season, no choice ka plant Virginia tobacco kasi you get support. You get support. Ibabalik ng ibabalik ng national government. Yung estimate nga namin is 600 pesos. 600 pesos per kilo. Now, the average yield of Virginia tobacco is less than 2,000 kilos. Okay? Eh, multiply mo yun. I-multiply mo yung 600 pesos to, let's say, 2,000 or 1,200. Bakit bibitawan ng local government to support na yan?
20,000.
Ha? Million. Maraming projects na sa localities na funded by that tobacco fund. Kasi ang local government, ang provincial may share dyan. Yung municipal may share din. So, in fact, if you ask me, it's an equitable sharing of taxation.
All right. Thank you, sir. Noted on that. Maybe you'd like to add, Mr. Villegas?
Yeah, that's basically, but that's the main source of the sin tax law. So, tama si Rolly. The sin tax law has been designed. After all, you cannot prevent people from smoking, no? So they pay, you charge heavy taxes for this sin taxes for the liquors, cigarette, etc. No, so this has been now the main source of revenue. In fact, that was the one that being used for supporting the universal health system, and maybe to a great extent, including the pandemic. So may trade-off because you don't like, but hindi mo naman ma-avoid. That is a advice that people would rather pursue, kill themselves with smoking. So you might as well, be able to help back in terms of increasing the source of our sin taxes. Yun lang siguro, Christine.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir, for answering that question. So we have another from Dominic Solpico from Zoom webinar chat box. What kinds of investments do the speakers think will help boost production in agriculture sector to achieve food security? So he's asking specifically po on the kind of investments you think would likely boost the production of our agriculture.
Let me answer that. Let me answer
Yes,
that.
sir. Go ahead po.
As I have indicated in my paper, the monoculture of rice, corn, and coconut is really the source of poverty of our people. No, because you cannot from the monoculture, given the fact that under the land reform, the agrarian reform law, the average size farm has practically been reduced from about 2.5 to 3 hectares, maybe 2 to 3 decades in back, to only about a hectare or less, or half hectare now. So how do we respond to that? That's what the formula I gave. That we must be able to convert the monoculture to a polyculture agricultural system, meaning you can plant a lot of things on the same area. So this will mean relay cropping, successive planting. You do not waste any part of this the land, no, and do not make it well, and make your irrigation very flexible. That you don't only irrigate rice, but you can irrigate vegetable, you can irrigate fruit trees, you can irrigate corn and other, say sugar cane or bananas or whatnot. So under this scheme, the way towards reducing poverty or increasing productivity is through focusing on the polyculture, focus on what you can plant on the land, on farm enterprises, what you can do off farm, outside the farm, in the household, raising livestock, raising fish, or even culturing rice with you cook rice with fish or with ducks. No, so you can integrate rice farming with duck and also with what do you call it, with fish. So that way you don't have to use also pesticide, because they will be killed if you put that. So you also produce a rice that is not contaminated with chemicals. So on the land of farm, and of course family based, because other members of the family can have sari-sari store, they can have other enterprise. So when you combine their income, the farm family must be able to generate to bring them beyond the poverty line, 15,000 at the very least, or that is about a little beyond the poverty threshold of $2 per person for a family of 10. So ideally 15 to 30,000 pesos a month. That will be the target now for future agriculture development to flourish. Otherwise, there will be continuing exodus from the farms, and there will be continuing importation of costly food for our people. So because there will be this no incentive for farmers, there is no price signals for them to grow, and there is no mechanism for them to generate income much beyond poverty line, to have a decent form of living in the countryside. So yun yung masasabi natin dyan. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. I think that's a very interesting point, sir. Diversifying our main agricultural crop production. And also, I think shifting the way Filipinos shifting the Filipino culture of food consumption in that in that sense. Okay, we have another question from Amado Sabio from Facebook. Are you bullish about the future of agriculture exports from the Bangsamoro? When I went to Cotabato a few years ago, there seemed to be a strong Japanese presence there. But we all know that they have to build their agricultural infrastructure a lot. What do you think the prospects of the region are with regard to agricultural exports? Yes, I think not just in Cotabato, but I guess in the Mindanao region as well. Sir, can we unmute you? Unmute you po? Yes.
Rolly can initially answer that, but
Yes,
Rolly, I can also do that. No.
Okay.
Rolly.
Sir, Dr. D.
Rolly.
Dr. D, may we have you around po to answer? I think his again, Dr. D?
Okay, let me answer that while
Yes,
waiting
sir.
for Rolly.
Yes, we're waiting.
You know, I am an optimist. I always believe that we can do it. I have put all my lives in agriculture. From the time I was a 6-year-old boy, tending to my father's field as his assistant up to now, working in 20 countries, you know, globally. No, and I am more on the business of agriculture, how to make it profitable. That is my trust. So the issue there is policy environment. If the policy environment and the incentive structure, the one being led by Secretary Dar is a good, you know, policy environment. But the problem is, it is not generating. We are receiving a skimpy budget system, you know, very low support. So incentive structure, give the farmers the right price. They will respond. The price signal is the greatest mechanism where farmers will be incentivized. And so with investors, there must be equitable sharing of, you know, income from agribusiness ventures. But when one partner is receiving too much at the expense of the other one, then there will be disharmony. So there will be a big disconnection there. So what is important now is you create a favorable policy and environment for agriculture to prosper, incentive structure for farmers to respond, and financial, you know, and budgetary support with donors and the banks, our banks, putting their money into agriculture, so we will have a good future for agriculture.
All right.
But
Well,
I told you,
sir.
on the other hand, the opposite. If the opposite and the existing environment remains, then we have a gloomy. If the W2E positions, you know, continue to make us appear like we are a very open economy, unless we are able to make the market work, kasi napaka-imperfect yung market eh. When you deal with a perfect market, the open economy works well. But when you deal with an imperfect market, then you will have the exploiters, you know, the people, the scrupulous people, the smugglers, the money lenders, the traders, the importers, and all, they will be, the playing field will just be too biased in their favor, because the market system is not operating as so that it can, you know, effectively, you know, attune to the wishes of your WTO positions. So yun yung problema eh. That's why may tug of war between the neoliberalists and the, you know, and the nationalist economists, no, would like to do more. So yun yung problema eh. Sometimes even among ourselves, I have a conflict with some of my best friends, but it is just a matter of thinking, no? Because me, I have grown up in the farm. I know what the problem of the farmers. So I am really very pro-farmer, no matter what. So, but so yun ang malaking issue dyan na Christine. So this is a political will issue. This is a policy issue. This is an incentive structure issue. And this is an investment issue where foreign direct investment will make a difference.
Yes. Thank you very much, sir, for all the points you raised regarding that issue. Truly looks like a long way to go and more work to be done. But like you said earlier, there's hope for progress in this area. So moving on to the next question. In the past CRC events, the value of aggregating entities that help give us production scale, such as cooperatives and companies such as Mayani PH, which gathers products from farm gate and brings it straight to buyers. Do you think FDIs can bring in startup capital to help the next generation of Filipino farmers create new ideas and technologies for consolidating agricultural production so that it can be more efficient? So this question is from Ms. Ann Jark. Go ahead, sir. She's asking about startup capital coming from FDIs.
Alam mo yan, there will always be how do we encourage foreign direct investment to come in? So definitely foreign direct investment has propelled many agriculture, Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, Vietnam. So their foreign direct investment in agriculture really is huge. So, but in the case of the Philippines, we have also to deal with not only with the policy environment, but with the climate change. We are also vulnerable to disasters and typhoons and other calamities. So we must really be able to manage also, including pests and diseases, as well as veterinary problems. So everything now in investment parlance, we now have to see to it that we are able to manage this risk. We must be able to go to an area where we can manage, or we can pinpoint, we can handle, manage this risk, and even with the existing risk, we will be able to still make agriculture moving. So that is, yun yung system. Hindi tayo makakapagbigay ng good dyan. It depends on the situation, it depends on the environment, and it depends on the incentive structure prevailing. So that money will flow to agribusiness and agribusiness industry. That's all I think is trying to say.
Dr. D, can we ask you for any additional? Yes, sir. Would you like to add on that po?
What's the question again? Because I went up to the room.
Okay, so I will repeat the question. Do you think FDIs can bring in startup capital to help the next generation of Filipino farmers create new ideas and technologies for consolidating agricultural production so that it can be more efficient?
Well, yes. Where the foreign investors know the market. That's like the Slipa guy. You know the guy, the Frenchman. Pubs. You know the Frenchman. You the
Coco?
You're the Coco. There's a processing plant in Lipa.
Marcial.
Then the export freeze-dried
cargo.
freeze-dried coconut. That's new market. That's new market. High-end market. Then you have a new market for high-end banana chips. New market for dark artisan chocolate. Okay. Then the technology, you need to have processing technology which is environmentally friendly, and they will invest. They will invest the money because they know the market. They know the market.
Okay. Thank you very much for Dr. D for that answer. So now we would like to call in the CLCR Chief Project Officer, Ms. Pamela Carbonell, to join our panel.
Yes, good morning.
Morning, ma'am. We have a question from Mr. Travis Mark Santiago. He asked, I am deeply saddened why the government cannot prioritize our agricultural sectors. Since there are so much priorities depending who is in position and power, and government budget is limited. Now we see why we need to open up our economy for international and global investors in the country, so that it will help the government gain more tax revenues from companies, local and foreign, that will help support these social projects and budgets like the agriculture sectors. Also, the advantage of foreign companies owning 100% of their businesses in our country will generate more decent and competitive jobs for the people, gain more access to new technologies, capital, and new ideas, especially for our farmers. Let the government create laws that will regulate and punish abusive corporations. Never put it in the Constitution, which is a lesson for all of us. So I don't think this is a question. I think he is this is his feedback
Yeah.
regarding this forum. Anything you'd like to say, Ma'am Pam?
Yes, first of all, just wanted to say that I'm truly honored to have Mr. Pablito Villegas and Dr. Rolando D to be with us here today and answer your tough questions. But in regards to that specific comment, thank you. I actually strongly agree with what you said. If we I've been noticing that some of the questions are based on the budget of the Philippines and how we're not prioritizing the agricultural sector, no. But to think, to give a case, in 2017, Vietnam had a total registered FDI capital in their agriculture, forestry, and the fishing sector at about $133 billion. And that could equate to about quadrillion of pesos, and the budget that we're proposing and that we can only afford by the 2022 is about 5 trillion. So even if we reprioritize, the budget that we have, although we really need to, a budget that we have for the agricultural sector, it will still not be enough. So that's the reason, one of the reasons why we badly need to open the economy. We badly need the RBH2 to pass in Senate and have a plebiscite, have the people ratify in the Constitution, introduce that amendment to open the economy and to attract more foreign direct investments in the country. So that's what we're, and again, I strongly agree. We hope, again, that we are able to request the Senate to tackle this in their floor. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Pam, for giving your answer regarding that feedback. So let's move on to another follow-up question from Mr. Dominic Solpico. This has something to do as well with foreign restrictions. Follow-up to my previous question, which foreign investments beneficial to agriculture sector are hindered by the foreign equity restrictions? Dr. D and Sir Pablito Villegas, maybe would like to answer that question. Which foreign investments beneficial to agriculture sector are hindered by foreign equity restrictions?
Yeah, well, generally the foreign equity restriction now, the 60-40 rule, di ba? 70-30, 60-40 rule. So, I think we can open up more on the side of, say, introducing technology that will make a dramatic impact on agricultural productivity as well as on the processing sector, no? So, but as I told you, it's in the Philippines, no? Given the stack of knowledge of my university, University of the Philippines, no, in particular, our scientists have had a good handle on the technology side. The problem is is more on how you package these technologies and how you bring these technologies down to the grassroots. No, so there is a disconnect, and of course, it will even be more progressively done if budget for research, development, and extension services will be increased, dramatically. Now we are hoping now that the Mandana's doctrine, the DILG now has an incremental budget that will now be flowed back to the local government units. So there must be a lot of interfacing between the academe, between the research, PICARD, PESIARD, Bureau of Agriculture Research, University of the Philippines, and also the state university and colleges, doing more grassroots research. Say, for example, mango. Mango is so heavily using pesticide. So how can you export mango where it's residue limits is beyond what is required by our importing, by the consumers in other country. So there must be a way now to produce mango, where the maximum residue allowable can be had, no? Or number two, where we can prevent we can have greater productivity by preventing pests and diseases, no? So, or we can, how do we synchronize, how do we make it, say, produce it seasonally or say off-season fruiting, but without the use of heavy poisonous pesticides. So these are challenges. You look also of pineapple. It's rather controlled by the two companies, but we can do. I have seen pineapple growing the Formosa variety in Camarines Norte, in Quezon. So this can be given big boost, and this is where, for example, foreign investment buyers. No, now for example, I am very happy with Royal Cargo. Royal Cargo now is with their Agri logistics, with their cold chain or IQF technology. They are now being able. They will now start. I think at the end of the month they will start shipping. They own a cold chain ship that will now bring our fruits, vegetable products to the United States, to Europe. So this is the kind of thing where foreign investment, of course, to a certain extent, it has some German investment in it. So and they have poured in more than $500 million in the last 5 years. So Royal Cargo now is trying to decentralize. What do we do? If you give the farmer a purchase order on the product that you want to process or to buy, then farmers will respond. Because at the end of the day, farmers is assured of a market price for his product. But not now. It's not happening. So yun lang gawin mo yung isang ngayon, and then you can now invite, because the problem now with agro-based processing is the lack of raw material. You cannot do that without an assurance that the raw material will be there, because otherwise foreign investors will not come in. So you have to provide that incentive structure to the farmers to respond. So ano yun? Paano tayo nagre-respond? We respond through financial incentives. We respond through health incentives, nutrition incentives, many other forms of incentive that can be had. Or if you tell me that you will not give me, that you'll give me a pesticide-free raw material, then I'll give you a price much higher than this one. Ganon. Kasi yun ang ilalagay mo sa processing para makapag-export tayo, para pumasok yung foreign direct investment. But kaya sabi ko, policy environment, incentive structure, and of course, the supporting, local government units, they are very important. But if you see local government unit taxing them, asking lagay, how can you invite foreign investors to come in? Yan ang dapat ng problema ng DILG, because, investors are complaining because they are being taxed legally, and they are being taxed illegally. Lagay system. So how do we remove it from our system? As long as we have that, then we will, let's not hope for foreign direct investment to flow in the countryside. Or before a business permit is granted, you need 36, 40 signatures, or so many things to be done. So that will be a disincentive for foreign direct investment to come. So yun muna ang ating solvent, creating an investment climate that is conducive for foreign direct investors to come in our country. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for that very substantive answer. So I guess it all boils down still to our willingness to prioritize the sustainable development of our agriculture sector. Dr. D, would you like to add on that, sir, before we end this? Dr. D? Okay, so as much as we want to discuss all the questions the participants gave us in the chat box, yes, I'm afraid that our time is running out. I would like first to thank, of course, Mr. Pablito Villegas and Dr. Rolando D and all of our speakers for joining us this morning. Sir, thank you very much not only for gracing us this morning, but also for your passion to push forward reforms in our agricultural sector. Thank you po. Maraming salamat po sa inyo. So that ends our open forum. But if you have further questions for our speakers this morning, feel free to message us or coordinate with them after this session. All right, to formally close this session, may I call on the Chief Project Officer of the Center for Local and Constitutional Reform, none other than Ms. Pamela Dayan D. Carbonell. Good morning, ma'am.
Yes, good morning. Maraming salamat, Ms. Christine. We express our gratitude to our partners attended today by Ms. Tonette de Jesus and Mr. Jerome Hogno from the Konrad-Adenauer-Stiftung, Ms. Clarice Buday from the Center for Research and Communication, the Development Academy of the Philippines, GSPDM, PSPA, and Blueprint.ph. And of course, we thank our esteemed speakers today, the Secretary of the Department of Agriculture, William D. Dar, the Executive Director of the Center for Food and Agribusiness, Dr. Rolando, and the owner entrepreneur of Villegas Organic and Hobby Ecotourism Farms, Mr. Pablito M. Villegas. It is truly an honor to have heard your insights and prospects for transforming the Philippine agriculture industry. Dr. Rolando D. presented that in among our ASEAN neighbors in terms of food security, Philippines ranks last and ranks first in poverty incidence in the Southeast Asia. Even before the pandemic, we saw the different production and economic models per product. Likewise, Mr. Pablito Villegas provided a baseline of a dysfunctional agriculture system, the harms of monoculture and chemical-based agricultural production system. Our farmers and fishermen are at a loss from being price takers and becoming WTO agreements dependent. Perhaps in the next session, sir, we can discuss in depth how responses of countries like Vietnam are able to deviate from this system, with one of the reasons including introducing their own policies for opening their economies and welcoming FDIs, hence gaining more control over their agricultural sector. How ironic that we know we are a country blessed with rich and diverse natural resources, but unfortunately, we have a long way to go in filling technological and systemic gaps. As a nation that greatly depends on the produce of our agricultural industries, we need more opportunities that will ensure sustainable development. By doing the best we can on this regard, we allow economic gains to reverberate to various livelihood sectors in society. When our speakers laid out solutions in having transformative, regenerative, and may I add, future-ready agriculture system, we have to ask, where will we get these capital from? Even if we reprioritize the budgeting system here in the Philippines, it will still not be enough due to the numerous problems of not only food production and supply, but of knowledge transfers, interlinking global value chains, infrastructures needed to really plan our path towards a more secure and nutritious country. So what is our preferred future here to achieve a progressive, resilient, future-empowered communities for the Philippine agricultural sector? For us, it's an open, flexible economy. When we support RBH2 that introduces the phrase unless otherwise provided by law in the 1987 Constitution, magiging bukas po ang ekonomiya gradually. Remember, laws and regulations will be done through ordinary legislations, and this will allow us more flexibility to adapt to the international market. And the FDIs introduced will help us address the industry's limited resources to innovate, thereby allowing to increase its potential for growth. We reiterate the point raised by Secretary William Dar, whereby FDIs will serve as a major catalyst for modernization and development of efforts for industrialization and professionalization, complementing adjustment to domestic policies and providing government support for digital connectivity. In a global context driven by chaos, fast-paced changes, sustainability challenges, and even sometimes erratic societal behaviors, flexibility is crucial. And I quote our late Secretary Gary Olivar when he said, "The restrictions add to the complexity and uncertainty of the rules of the game, while also presenting opportunities for corruption as firms try to curry favors from government to work around constraints. Instead, we should be encouraging the entry of foreign investors who do not like to break the law." end quote. With our ongoing fight against the pandemic, it is becoming clearer now more than ever that lifting restrictions on foreign investment is necessary in keeping momentum of our economic progress while providing a sustainable cushion for any economic loss. We trust that our solidarity in this regard will pave the way for the full realization of our shared hope for a better Philippines and a stronger national economy. Maraming salamat po. A wonderful Friday morning to you all and stay safe.
Thank you, Ms. Pam, and thank you all once again for being with us today. We appreciate the presence of our speakers and panelists in this session. Again, thank you very much to Usec Malaya, Ms. Tonette de Jesus, Secretary William Dar, Dr. Rolando D, Mr. Pablito M. Villegas, for gracing us this morning in the ninth session of our economic fora. Also, of course, our participants and members of the press, we appreciate you for being with us in this forum. Now, just some last reminders for all of our participants. Please, for the post-evaluation form link, it will be sent to your emails. So please help us improve more of our activity. All presentations will be available on G Drive. So kindly check your emails after this session so you can browse and review. Certificates will be upon request, so please wait for the post-session email we will be sending so you can have your request sent. Registration for the next session will be sent to your emails, or you may check our Facebook pages, DILG, Core, and CRC pages for the link. Should you want to review the whole session, you can watch the live recording on our Facebook pages flashed as we end this session. Once again, thank you very much for being with us today in this forum. Truly, we gained a lot from our speakers who were with us this morning. See you all once again on the next Econ Fora. Keep safe, everyone, and have a blessed weekend.